All right, so in our last video, we set up the idea of the compassion spectrum. We went through what does it look like to go from a place of sympathy through to empathy and compassion. And now we want to look at specific materials. So through the progress and evolution of Justice in June, we've been able to build off of different pieces as the foundation of our information framework. And for that, one of the months, we looked at the book, So You Want to Talk About Race, with Ijeoma Oluo. And this gives a clear breakdown of what are the different racial nuances in America and how does that play out and how can we be aware and cognizant of it and then move past it to make our spheres better. So we just want to share a few excerpts and then break it down and look at how this is played out in the context of allyship. So in this first chapter, Oluo starts with an anecdote where she's talking to a friend of hers who happens to be a white male, and the discussion of, is it really about race? Here he says, surely if you improve things for the lower classes, you improve things for minorities. And she flips it back around and asks if the same reasons why Black people are poor, are those the same reasons why white people are poor? In our last video, we talked about the concept of the racetrack, right? Staggered progress, where even if you move everyone in a certain group that is not tied to a cultural identity forward, you do not close the gap that already exists between them. So looking at this, it makes sense, right, that we want to move ourselves forward, but we have to take into account all the different pieces that play into it.
Exactly. And so another one of those really important pieces is understanding lived experience.
Right. So going from a place of sympathy to empathy, right, takes that understanding. And here Oluo states, right, we are, each and every one of us, a collection of our lived experiences. Our lived experience shape us, how we interact with the world, and how we live in the world. And our experiences are valid because we do not experience the world with only part of ourselves. We cannot leave our racial identity at the door.
And this seems like a simple, intuitive concept. Just, okay, the way I walk through the world, or the way you walk through the world, or Brianna walks through the world is valid. That's a true and honest experience. But when we really think about it, that should kind of eliminate any of the pushback you would give someone for saying, hey, what you're describing isn't true or didn't happen or is just not really the problem, where again, you're deflecting, you're trying to say, oh, it's actually about class, it's not about race, like that classmate that Brie mentioned and Luo had. So again, what that looks like is saying everything you experience is valid. Everything, every emotion, every event that you face in your day-to-day is true and valid and 100% honest. But because your individual experience is honest, that means the next person's individual experience is honest. And when you ask them how their day is, or when they invite you to share that space, when they're trying to tell you, this is my true, lived, valid, honest experience, that you got to give them the same consideration, the same weight that you give your own day-to-day experience. And that's really powerful in understanding, because then you can see, then it helps get you to that empathy piece of trying to understand, oh, well, when I walked through my day and then this person reacted to me in this way, that's honest, that's true. So that when my friend tells me about this experience they had with how somebody else responded or reacted with them, that also must be true. With my same logic of saying that my experience is valid, their experience is valid. And that helps build empathy, build an understanding of what they're going through is the same validity as what I'm going through, even if we're having different experiences.
So we just talked about the concept of lived experience and the validity of each person's lived experience. And one of the biggest hurdles to understanding this is the concept of white privilege.
And this is where it gets a little tricky again, because we're like, great, now we've established that everyone's lived experience is valid and I can recognize yours and you can recognize mine. But the issue comes in, and the way this plays into the systemic nature is that our society caters to one lived experience, and that is the white lived experience. It does not address or acknowledge that there are other lived experiences that are equally true and valid. And that's why this is such a big hurdle. Because again, first, we're starting at that sympathy piece. Even recognizing that you have a privilege or that your lived experience enables you, benefits you in the world versus somebody else's lived experience is so important to recognize as step one. And that hopefully will progress us to step two, that empathy piece of understanding, hey, because I have a different lived experience and the society caters to it, where can I use that then to elevate others' voices? And that's what's exciting. That's where you can then use that privilege, turn it around, and then elevate others' voices. Start breaking down some of those barriers that have prevented us as a society from recognizing more than one lived experience as valid and as honest. And that's what's really exciting about when you can use the privilege to take you into compassion, or you're using your understanding to take action and being part of that solution.
Exactly. And what's important to know is we want to recognize that it doesn't mean someone's life isn't hard, that they didn't have a myriad of challenges. It just means that their skin color wasn't the reason why, or did not contribute to the barriers and challenges that they did face. Recognizing that is allowing for the opportunity to move past it and figuring out where are those discrepancies in place on an individual as well as a structural and systemic level that can then move us forward to breaking down those barriers.